Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, have you ever encountered this particular first world problem where you get yourself a nice cool Airbnb for your next holiday or city break, but then you quickly find out towards the end of that time that your checkout is 10 a.m. and your flight home is 9 p.m. So what do? You drag your luggage around a crowded city all day before thinking, you know what, enough of this. I'm going to sit at the bar at the airport for the next 4 hours instead. But what if you could make more of your time and just drop those bags off at your nearest hotel, even though you're not actually staying there? Well, welcome to Stasher, which is the world's first luggage storage network, where they connect you with all those big hotels and stores and enable you to keep your luggage safe while you just enjoy the remainder of your time in your city of choice. I think it's a great idea, and the fact that they started 2020 by appearing on TechCrunch with $2.5 million in funding, I thought it was time to invite them on the show to learn a bit more, not only about Stasher, but the story behind it too. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to London here in the UK so we can speak with Jacob Wedderburn-Day, CEO and co-founder of Stasher. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Jacob. I'm one of the co-founders of Stasher. We are basically a left luggage platform. We sign up shops and hotels all around the world. And the idea is that Stasher is a way for them to monetize extra space that they might have. So hotels have their sort of classic left luggage rooms anyway. Shops will tend to have storage rooms. We make that space available for customers who are looking for somewhere for short-term storage. And I think it's a classic problem a lot of people are familiar with when they travel, especially nowadays with the popularity of Airbnb. You check out, but your flight's not till later. You don't want to be dragging your stuff around with you, sort of worrying about it throughout the day. That's where you can store it with Stasher. It's half the price of lockers. We've got hundreds of locations around major cities, all around the world. And it's really as simple as that. It's a super on-demand booking process too. So.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than the dreaded 10 a.m. checkout and the 9 p.m. flight, is there?
It's the classic combination as well.
And Stasher has been called, understandably, the Airbnb of luggage, and is actually a sharing economy solution for storage. But can you tell me more about how your global network of hotels and stores with that extra space, travellers can actually find affordable, convenient storage, all for their belongings when they've got that dreaded combination at 10 a.m. checkout in the morning?
So it's really straightforward. We have apps, also a mobile website, and essentially, I mean, if you can check it out for yourselves, and it probably demonstrates it even better than I can explain it. But you load up the app, you search wherever is sort of convenient for you. Obviously, we've got like a little geo-targeting feature. You can just hit Near Me Now and search immediately around your local area. If you're planning in advance, you can sort of select the city, whatever it might be. And it's really that easy. It will populate a map and also a list of all the locations. The Airbnb of luggage analogy is actually quite fair in that respect because it's designed in quite a similar way. You'll be selecting based on the sort of opening hours, the location, the capacity of the stores in question. But in another way, it's designed to be much more on demand because the majority of people who book us will tend to be booking sort of same day or just one day before. But it's really, designed with the end user in mind to be super quick and super slick.
It is a great concept, but I'm curious, what's the inspiration for Stasher? I've got a feeling there's got to be a story there somewhere.
Yeah, so it came about 4 years ago, actually. Anthony is my co-founder. We studied together at university, knew we worked well together from that, and we're quite keen to set up some kind of business. And then the inspiration for this actually happened because Ant used to live really centrally in London, right between King's Cross and Euston. And if you're familiar with them, they are like two of the busiest stations in the capital. And so often people would drop by and say, you know, can I leave something with you just for the day or for a few weeks or whatever it was. And it was through this that we sort of recognized that demand for storage in cities was a real problem. We started looking into it. And we realized that, the only solution at the time were the station lockers, and they were actually, they were pretty sort of ill-equipped to deal with the scale of the problem, the way that it was growing, the fact that Airbnb was becoming more popular. There's only, I think, 8 sets of lockers now left in London. They're really expensive. They tend to get quite bad reviews. And kind of as much for fun and for learning as anything else, we basically set up this prototype website where people could book storage in Anthony's flat and then my flat, just to see if that was sort of there was an appetite for it. And the funny thing was that there was, and it's amazing to look back at the sort of people who actually booked storage literally in our apartments when we had sort of no reviews, no insurance, or any of the stuff that we have now. But that was great because that sort of enabled us to learn more about the problem, familiarize ourselves with the market a little bit, and ultimately sort of iterate on the product until we end up where we are now with years later with sort of thousands of shops and hotels that are solving the same problem but in a much more scaled way.
And I'm glad you mentioned London Euston there, because I think there's only one thing worse than the 10 a.m. checkout, of course, and that's waiting for a delayed train in Euston with 1,000 people looking up at that board of doom. It's
there were some incredible scenes of that this weekend after the storm Kira across the UK. Oh my God, yeah, Euston can be chaos.
Now, I believe that the service you offered is secured with the exact same standards as a hotel check-in, and Stash also partners with leading brands such as Premier Inn, Accor and Hotels.com to provide that worldwide storage that we're talking about. But can you tell everyone listening how it works and how much it costs, just for anyone that's thinking to themselves, now, I do have one of them early checkouts?
Absolutely. So price is fairly consistent across the network. It will normally be £6 in the UK or equivalent in other countries, so €6 or €7, $7 or $8, that kind of thing. That price is per bag, but also per day. So you book once, there's one fee, there's no hidden fees or anything like that, and you get as much storage as you need for that time. So that's meant to be sort of quite nice and easy and straightforward. And typically we find people are storing for sort of 5 hours to sort of like a day's length anyway. So that's the sort of pricing model. In terms of how it works, and you sort of mentioned a little bit about sort of security, that's a completely fair question. That's one we get asked quite a lot. I suppose understandably, because luggage tends to have that sort of security connotation nowadays, especially with airports. But as you mentioned, yeah, we use the same standards as a hotel check-in. So when we were designing this, one of the things we observed was that, in some ways, this isn't actually a new service. It's a sort of original concept, the way we put it together. But I mean, hotels have been providing storage for their guests for years and years and years. And so we spoke to a lot of hotels when we were starting out, and we modeled the same processes that they have. So that's, there's a full digital paper trail of your booking. In some ways, we can actually enhance that because all bookings are made online for us, so we can fraud check cards. We'll impose an ID check when someone drops off the bag. Straightforward stuff, the kind of thing you'd have in a hotel. But all these things are in place just to make sure that sort of the processes are followed and everyone feels secure on both sides. And then the other thing that we've done, which is actually new, is offer the insurance deal. So hotels won't typically tend to insure your goods, or insure your luggage when you store it, especially if it's one of those things where, you check out and you leave your bag with the hotel for the last day. Generally, it's not insured. It's sort of almost done as a favor. They take no sort of responsibility for your goods. Whereas what we're able to do, because we've got this sort of worldwide platform in this group deal, is come up with an insurance product that meant that people's bags are covered up to £1,000 or equivalent worldwide. Lockers, again, it's something they're not able to provide either. You basically store at your own risk, whereas with Stasher, you don't have to. So in that way, we sort of feel like we've actually made the process an extra bit safer.
And you did say it's all over the world. What kind of countries are using this at the moment?
Good question. I mean, we're in over 250 cities. Now, a lot of that's in Europe, but we do officially have locations on every continent. We've got a handful in Cape Town and Buenos Aires, which sort of give us Africa and South America, respectively. We're biggest in Europe, USA and Australia. Those are the sort of 3 markets we focused on. We're looking quite closely at Asia at the moment. I mean, we have a scattering of places around sort of Thailand, Singapore, Hong Kong, South Korea, Japan as well, in preparation for the Olympics. So the nice thing about the model, as you say, is it's a problem you have whenever you travel. So it's a fully global problem, and this is designed to be that kind of global solution to it.
And you guys first appeared on my radar in a funding round, which I think I read about on TechCrunch. But for anyone that missed that, can you share the news about your recent funding round and ultimately what that will mean for Stasher?
Oh, yeah. No, thanks for bringing that up. So that was last month. We closed around. It was £2 million or $2.5 million. That was led by a fund called Venture Friends. We had a lot of follow-on investment as well from prior investors, among them the CEO of Big Yellow Storage, who was our first ever angel backer way back in 2016. And yeah, that round's actually, I mean, that's super exciting. Basically, what it means for us is, I like to think at this point in time, we're sort of quite confident of our product market fit. So we know what works. We know, like, we have a sort of clear path to generating more revenues. And for us now, it's about doubling down on what's worked. So we know that we need to invest more in our product team just to make our apps as great as they can be. The same goes for partnerships and our sort of marketing. A lot of our marketing at the moment is sort of channel based. So we'll have like referral partnerships with vacation rental managers, Airbnb hosts, events companies who need sort of storage at events, which is another sort of big angle that we serve. And yeah, because we have that sort of fit now, it's just about finding more people to sort of fulfill those roles and just sort of scale up all those channels. But that's really exciting because you can just you see growth coming, not just sort of around Europe where we started, but sort of internationally as well. So yeah, it's hugely exciting times.
Well, what I love about what you're doing here is, yes, you're solving a real problem, but it also seems tailor-made for the travel industry because of that natural collaborative nature of it. I mean, how important is that collaborative nature to everything you do at Stasher? Oh,
I mean, that's something I really love about it. Definitely, we've seen firsthand so many times. It's a great industry, and I think because it's quite time sensitive, everyone across the industry sort of appreciates the value of a customer when you've got them at that point of need. So, I mean, some people travel loads, but generally people travel sort of a handful of times every year. And the nice thing is they sort of have quite familiar sort of patterns of journeys when they are traveling. And so for a company like ours, it's great, when they're checking out, that's when we want that relationship with a vacation rental manager who can say, by the way, we've got cleaners coming in, but you can store your bags really affordably with Stasher, and they've got places around the corner. Or, there's, vacation rental is sort of the most obvious angle for us and the one that we found has really, really converted well. But there's almost no limit to the kind of company that we could work with. We're working at the moment on sort of deals with big banks and sort of card schemes to provide perks for their business travelers. We've done deals with airlines. There's really a whole sort of range of possibilities out there. And I think the fact that companies in the travel industry are so willing to embrace those kind of referral partnerships and are quite well set up to do so is a hugely positive thing. And something that, conferences that we've been to around the world of sort of those relationships we've made have been hugely beneficial.
And on this podcast, I hear about a lot of new solutions coming out, and people encounter a problem and create a solution, put it out there, but then it almost evolves into something else as people use it for a variety of different reasons. So I'm curious, do you have any use cases you can share where people or businesses are embracing the use of this space as a service, but in different ways?
Yeah, it's quite funny to hear that term, space as a service. I think there's so many examples now of different sort of like X as a service businesses, but it is, I think in this case, space as a service is actually, it's quite a valid one, because especially if you look at the way that cities are evolving, and I've been to a sort of few interesting conferences with sort of keynotes on this subject, you can see the way that cities are changing. It does make sort of space a more sort of premium asset. It sort of raises the value of it. And if you've got space, especially in prime real estate, you want to be making that space work as effectively as possible. So, Stasher, obviously, in terms of luggage storage, that's a clear-cut example of sort of space as a service generating ancillary revenues for businesses that have that extra space. There's some other quite cool use cases that we've sort of explored and seen. So, there's a big theme in terms of fulfillment, right? So companies like, you see the big sort of fulfillment companies and sort of package delivery companies, and they need that sort of space at different points in their sort of fulfillment journeys. So either when sort of parcels weren't able to be delivered and they need temporary storage, or indeed as just sort of like collection points for their customers. So that's another interesting example. You see some really interesting sort of moves happening there. Parking, I think, was actually, that was ahead of us in terms of space as a service. Obviously, that's quite a clear-cut niche, but definitely that's something that, Premier Inn, one of our big partners, we've talked to them about sort of the way that they're approaching ancillaries, and they've got a really proactive innovation team, and certainly like Stasher car parks. They're looking at Amazon lockers as well. There are tons of really interesting use cases that sort of fit into that space as a service niche for sure.
And I'm curious, you have touched upon the trust issue, and I think that's a topic that's going to keep coming up for you guys, because whether it be the guy that's accepting the bag that don't know what's actually in that bag and is going to be left there all day, or the people that leave in their bag with something expensive inside it. Obviously, we're surrounded by 24-hour news channels that convince us that the world's a nasty place, but you often find that the world's not as much like that, and people are just people that enjoy working with each other. But are you encountering any problems with trust, or are you largely putting that to bed with everything you've got in place?
It's something we've been really mindful of from the start, and I think because it's quite a sort of pertinent issue to the sharing economy in general. What you do tend to see is that sharing economy businesses have to be really proactive about the way that they address the trust issue. And in our case, I mean, we've been thinking about this from day one, so we've known that consumer reviews are going to be hugely important. Having those kind of co-branded partnerships with recognized brands, the likes of Premier Inn, Accor hotels and others, it's another real sort of trust factor. We've been quite deliberate, I said already, about our insurance, but sort of things like that just address the kind of direct customer concerns. So security there, the insurance is a great way to deal with that. Convenience of the service, making sure we've got adequate supply in all the right areas. Even getting the price right, again, is just another sort of trust factor that affects people's decisions. And then one that I think is really important as well is around sort of just design. So making sure that the product functions in a way that people expect. And I think people have quite high standards these days for how effective they want websites or apps to be. You're used to seeing some really, really slick products in the market. So you need to design in that way, because it's one of those things where it's so easy to lose trust. And you sort of really need to meet people's expectations in order to sort of win their trust over. And then I suppose beyond that initial aspect of sort of like winning people's trust at first conversion, you've also got to think about how you maintain that trust. And so for us, again, one of the things we've always been quite hot on is customer service, making sure that whether or not it's because you're coming to us with a question or a problem, you have first-class customer service delivered really quickly, delivered in a way that can actually solve what you need. So these are just some of the things that we think about when it comes to trust. But I think, trust it's a massive factor, and hopefully it's something that for us can be a real differentiator, because I mean, in this day and age, people are sort of reluctant enough sharing their personal data, let alone their sort of personal property. So it's important to get that right.
And you seem to be doing just that. You've had a cracking start of the year, especially with the TechCrunch feature and the funding.
Oh, thank you.
What's next for Stasher, though? Is that anything else you can share about the road ahead?
Yeah, I mean, for now, it's going to be quite straightforward in terms of like the strategy is around global expansion. We have a presence now in a lot of countries, and it's about making sure that we are effectively leading the market in all those new markets. So, I mean, we're very confident of our position in Europe. Want to make sure we're just as strong in America. Want to make sure we're just as strong in Australia. Loads of different elements come into that. So it's about making sure you have the best hotels on board. We've got some really strong relationships here in Europe. We'd love to get some more American chain hotels working on the platform. Get strong referral partnerships. Ultimately, working towards those really big relationships with the likes of sort of Airbnb and Booking.com. And we have lots of contacts at those companies already. But building towards a pilot with one of those, that could be a potential step change in the way that we do business. The product I mentioned, but just, we're hiring for more developers at the moment just to make sure the product that we're serving to customers is really the best that it can be. And so in many respects, it's a little bit rinse and repeat now. It's sort of, we found what works quite well in Europe, and it's about replicating that internationally, which isn't to say that is actually going to be as straightforward in practice as maybe I make that sound. But we have a clear path we know we're going down, and then the exciting part is just making sure you execute against that.
Fantastic. And of course, everyone listening, where can they download the app? Where can they find out more information online? Or even just contact your team if a business listening has got any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So apps both available on the App Store and the Play Store. You just need to search for Stasher or even Luggage Storage, and they should appear for you. Likewise online, stasher.com, that's the place to go to. And if you want to reach out to us, I mean, I'm at jacob@stasher.com, info@stasher.com as well. We'll reach the team. Definitely, yeah, reach out to us on LinkedIn as well. Happy to connect and answer any questions as well that way.
Well, a huge thanks for joining me today. I do get to go to a lot of tech conferences all over the world, and I do struggle with those early morning checkouts. So maybe I will be checking it out myself.
Fantastic.
But thanks for joining me on the podcast today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Neil. Cheers. My pleasure.
Wow. I mean, what a great concept, and certainly something that I'm going to be checking out, because hearing the story behind the company and how they've progressed from that great idea to starting 2020 with a funding round announced in TechCrunch is quite inspiring, isn't it? And the collaborative nature of the travel industry certainly feels like the perfect fit for Stasher. But whether you label it Airbnb for luggage or space as a service, whatever you think, what do you think of that concept? And will you use Stasher? Please, I want you to share with me your thoughts on Stasher, about today's conversation, and maybe share your insights or different takeaway that might be completely at odds with what I think, but that's completely fine because that's how this show works. So please, I turn the virtual microphone over to you. Email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Just look for me at Neil C. Hughes, but don't just follow me, please, or send in a connection request. Send a little note that you listen to the podcast just so I know that you're not just another follow me, follow you brigade. And of course, my website is techblogwriter.co.uk if you want to browse your way through over 1,100 other podcast interviews or even work with me. Whatever it is, I'll sit here patiently in my podcast chair waiting to speak with you, and I will arrive bright and early in your podcast feeds again tomorrow morning. So thanks for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.